I'm just so thrilled that everyone's here, and I'd like to welcome all for joining us. I'm Sherry J Yoon, for folks who don't know, Artistic Director of Boca de Lupo and co-curator of the Live Performance 360 series. We are coming from here in Vancouver on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. This area was known as SNOC, which is a gathering place and a place of trade and art making. And so we are here for a talk back for the VR 360 experience that we just all had, Pochsy at the Airport Hotel. And we are here with Karen Hines and Sandi Somers. And we're here to chat a bit about the show. How are you guys? You guys are good? We're all here? Yeah? It's good to see you. So I'm just going to dive in and chat a bit about the work, the amazing experience we had, the 360 experience, the intimacy, the extraordinary time that we have with you, even though you're not here, that you're very much there with us. And I would like to ask my first question, what was it like working in 360, specifically in comparison to live theater or to film?
Wow.
You take a moment to think about it.
Sandi, do you want to start?
Oh, well, sure, I can start. It was a new experience for me, as with Karen, because it was the first time that I used something along the lines of 360. So being a filmmaker, but also being, a designer in theater, trying to figure out the best way to meet the technology with the needs was really interesting. It was in some ways a different type of mastermind. It was so lovely that you could still create an experience that was immersive, that people felt they were right there. So there was this wanting to create an experience that did engage, that did pull people in, that did make it seem like someone was in the hotel room with Pochsy. And that was something that, and the other wonderful thing is making decision of a point of perspective of where the audience would be and how that would interact with what they're watching, and also where their eyes may go, even if they're just curious about what's going on in the room. So, in theater and in film, you just dictate where that look can go for the most part. And doing something like this, trying to accomplish all that in 15 minutes was super interesting. I loved how the two worlds, the two mediums combined and came together. I just had an amazing time with it, and I'm so grateful I had that opportunity to do that with you and with Karen. It was great.
Yeah, I agree. I'll add into that that as a performer, I drew from everything I knew about film and everything I knew about theater, and it felt a bit like a hybrid. But also there's this other element that nobody will really know about, which is that we didn't know what to expect with the final product. We were working in a way blind, in the sense that we were relying on Sherry and Jay and Carrie to explain to us what the ultimate result was going to be. But what we were looking at when we would do a take was Sandi's iPad, and moving our finger around the iPad like a cursor to draw our focus to where we wanted it to be. So if we wanted it to be behind Pochsy as opposed to on Pochsy, then we just moved our finger a little more. And it's not the experience that you have with the headset.
No.
And it was still very two-dimensional, very much like we were looking at video with a twist, but not the full 3D experience. So when we finally sent the camera and the headset back to Boca, and Carrie did the rendering, and then weeks later we get it all back and we look at it, and Sandi and I were kind of out of our minds putting the headsets on and actually experiencing it, and quite amazed. Even though we had been told what to expect and it had been described to us, we weren't prepared ultimately for the visceral experience of it.
Just want to thank you so much for taking the leap, because people have been enjoying it. You know, people have been laughing and having these little reactions to you as they've been watching it in a very solitary experience. But there's still a group vibe that happens as we've been listening in on people watching it. And so that visceral, that intensity, all things that 360 does, Pochsy's right in the pocket of. I mean, she is there with that camera and with that viewer in a way that is delightful and such a special and like a real gift, this really kind of precious gift that we get to have those 15 minutes with you. My next question is for you two working together. So you're longtime collaborators. You guys have worked together for a while. And I'm wondering, was this relationship a bit different working in 360 because it was a medium that you're both not used to, but at the same time drawing on what you guys both have, which is theater and film? And I know that that's also your relationship. So I'm kind of curious about it, because some things, it's interesting because the iPad experience, it's definitely not what ends up happening in the end, but of course it's a marker and a guide to get what you want. But for film, it's like you can pull from both things and then both things kind of failed you and then you had to take a leap. And I'm wondering if what is that about your relationship from the past? Is there stuff that was different this time? Just any kind of insights on how you guys worked together and how this experience was as a collaborative team?
I don't think we could have done it without having the level of trust that we have with each other. And that comes over time, and it comes from having had experiences together where we learned together. So here was another learning experience. It was different in that a lot of the time with previous things we've worked on, we would be together more. In this case, it was like I'd be at the bay, she'd be in her living room trying to figure out the camera. And there was a lot of separate work before we finally came together in the hotel and just, went for it. And even then, Sandi was in her part of the room, continuing to figure out the camera and recording. And I was, getting ready in the costume we thought would work, and all that stuff. It was, I would say it felt more disjointed, and so the fact that we have joined together so many times in the past made that possible.
Sandi, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, there's definitely a great degree of trust between Karen and I. We have gone through theater and film experiences together, and comes with that is an understanding of each other's value of work ethic and our expectations and our output. And I mean that as a creative output. So when you said earlier that it's no longer a film or theater, it becomes its own thing. I feel that that's something that Karen and I came to quite quickly in understanding of what to let go of both of those elements to create this third element. And, like Karen said, we were going through the pandemic. So a lot of our work was done independently and separately, and her sending me photographs of things. And that part may have been a little different, but I do feel that because we've worked so well together and know each other so well, that there was a trust in that we could be efficient and productive and creative and come together and do this, even though our actual rehearsal time and the creation time was quite condensed. Mm-hmm.
Right. I also want to just add that remind people who might not know that Sandi, during the shooting of this, was in the bathroom hiding.
Yeah, because you can't see, the director can't be in the room.
No. And so people think that there was somebody operating the camera. Well, she did, in the sense that she perfectly set the camera up to operate. But even though she was hiding in a bathtub, I felt her with me. I think largely because we had worked together so much, and I just took it for granted. She was with me. She was listening. She was hearing any problems, and I knew that she was there.
No, that's pretty huge that you're there and you're not alone, even though you are alone in that room. I remember the first time going into, well, not the first time, but one of the first times going into the goggles, and it was this beautiful world that had been created. But the first thing I felt was being alone. And it's so interesting. There was no humans in it. And it's interesting, the idea that you felt very much not like abandoned, like I'm just going to be talking in this room to myself. I am actually talking to someone. I think that does come across. I think that kind of urge to want to connect to humanness, a human, even though it goes to the camera and then through the bathroom and into the tub, which, come on, you got to know each other a long time. We're like, I got this great gig for you, but you're going to be in a bathtub the whole time. But I think there's something about that does resonate. And I think it comes across in the work for sure. A question I have, last question before I open it to folks in the room and to anyone in the chat, is so creating the excerpt or the world in 360, how did you make choices, or how was the 360 impactful on what pieces you were going to put together? Where are you going to put them? Why the movement like that? Like, what came first? Was it the areas, or was it the excerpt, or was it the motion that you wanted to have? I'm just curious if what of the choices you made was impacted or influenced by 360.
I had a feeling, even though I had not seen it, that I needed to put together material that could be ignored, because people would be excited about the immersion that they were experiencing. So I put together tried and true material, added some new material that I was interested in experimenting with just as, you know, an artist. But I thought about it more as a score than as a piece with a beginning, middle, and end that would necessitate somebody really clocking every phrase, because I knew that many people wouldn't. I also designed it to have flow, to move around a room, because we knew that we were going to work in a hotel room even before we knew which one. And I knew that I wanted there to be a longer piece where it was stationary, in case we were experimenting. We were, we really were taking leaps of faith. I wanted there to be shorter bits, longer bits, so that whatever might work would have a chance to work. But then I kind of did it for Sandi. Once we got into the space, I performed it. And then it was her eye that was on it in terms of what went where. I kind of improvised a path. And then that's when she started, like, that's where her, primary, besides putting the camera in exactly the right spot, that's where her directorial eye came in, and I gave over completely to her.
And other aspects of that too, in terms of how the 360 dictated our, we also looked at rooms and decided what time would we be shooting. So where's the sun going to be? Which is a very film thing to do. Of, when is the sun going to shine through the window so we can do a washout? What are the other elements in the room so that we don't have to augment it with other lighting? So trying to also find the room and the space and the windows that can work with the movement that Pochsy takes.
Right. And did you find that frustrating? Because you can't add an element. You can't add a lighting. You can, but we'll see it. Right. We'll see it in the 360. So it's a very limited and live thing. Did you like doing the timing of the window, or was it something that you felt? Yeah.
No. I think because of, having both a film and I'm a set lighting designer. So I think for me, I loved the challenge of what's in the room. What can we use? How do we elevate that? And that became, in essence, a part of the pathway of what time things are happening and where they're going to be. Karen looked at a couple of spaces, and to find a hotel near the airport that actually had neon lights under the bed. Karen did that.
No, but wait a minute. I put forward something like 3 or 4 other very much safer choices, like the Palliser Hotel, traditional spaces. And then I kind of threw Hotel Clique, which is that hotel. I threw Hotel Clique at Sandi almost as a joke. And she said, no, that's the one. So I really thought, no, it's garish. It's not. Pochsy would never stay in a hotel like that. And I think Sandi Somers was like, well, if she were actually quarantining, she might.
Right.
And so no, it was Sandi who saw how the potential of that room for this piece.
Right. So it's so really crucial, the partnership you guys had together and the creative energy that you could put into something to really leap together and really bring aspects of all of it to life, really. It's incredible, and it's very funny. Very funny. Have a good time in there with Pochsy.
Well, Pochsy made it clear what she thought of the hotel.
Yes. And do you guys have any questions? Yeah, of course, Ross.
I was really struck by Karen's first remark about not quite knowing what the end product would be when you went through it. Then you saw yourself. I was so struck by how incredibly intimate it was. I had to restrain myself from talking to you, to Pochsy. And then I kind of reminded myself that I was actually sitting in a room like this. But my question is, would you do it any differently if you had the chance to do it again right now?
Ah, that's a good question. Did you hear everything, Karen?
Yeah.
Did you hear? Okay.
Totally. Yeah. I think we would make some different choices. I mean, I'm very proud of what's there and surprised that it worked so well. But yeah, I think we were a bit conservative in a couple of cases that we might be able to take more chances this time around. We might. Sandi, what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I do feel that, that intimacy that you were talking about is definitely something that was important to Karen and I, to really feel like that the person who was in the room with Pochsy felt super special and was there for a reason. So I do feel that that worked. And I agree, now that having gone through the process, and like Karen said, I love what we've done, and I'm very happy to present it. And yes, there's always opportunity to grow once you learn more about a medium. So for sure.
I have to say though, the dance that you have, the delicate moment of like the medium of 360, as well as who you're kind of talking to, that stranger in the room, it adds to it, doesn't it not? Like this kind of just this tenderness and a bit of a dance that she's also doing with somebody else in the room. So I find that's really present. It's not like a intense, like as in who is this person, or there's just this kind of a gentle comfort that constantly happens. And there's something about that thematically stays within the whole like atmosphere of the experience. And something about that is very unique, actually. I mean, you see one-on-one in 360, but seeing Pochsy in 360, I mean, it's a different experience for sure. And I think there's something to that for sure.
We talked a fair bit about things like not wanting to, overwhelm the audience member, not wanting to make them feel cornered, or like how to find that balance. And so this is something that I was always asking Sandi about after each rehearsal and then after each take. Too much, too little. That balance, I do feel very good about. When I talk about taking more risks, I would never want to push that relationship too much more, because you are kind of trapped, right? When you're watching, like you're in the room, and so I wanted to be both polite and intimate. But, I think we might take more chances with like things on the floor, or, like this kind of dynamic, how close I got, how quickly we moved, things like that. We took a few chances here and there, and I think most of them paid off. And now we'd we do probably take different chances the next time, but I think always being polite to that person in the room with you is number one, being sensitive.
It's great. Any other questions?
I'd just like to rip off Ross's question
Yeah.
because I too was really, that stuck with me, your comment about I was surprised when I saw the product. So there's a huge amount of trust there too
Yeah.
about what you're going to get back. But, and thank you, by the way, for doing this and for sharing the work with us. It's great. But I just wondered, as an artist or as artists, did this suddenly, after you'd seen it, start to spark possibilities for the future and how you might work with this technology? Because your work just lent itself so beautifully. The intimacy was just, yeah, a beautiful thing.
Did you hear everything, Karen?
I did. Sandi, do you want to take that one?
Well, I would say I was personally super excited, going through the technology and working through it and having this experience. And definitely, I agree with what you've said, that there's a whole world that could come alive using 360. So definitely my creative juices were sparked. Yeah.
We have discussed just, in fun at first, but that's often the way things begin. We have discussed doing more.
Great. Any questions from the Zoom chat? Carmela? None? Okay, it's great. Well, are there any final thoughts or comments or anything else you want to share about your experience in creating this world?
Well, I think one of the things that, Karen mentioned, outside of us looking on an iPad and kind of moving our 360 in a 2D kind of way, the other thing that was so wonderful was not only seeing it, but the development of the audio world that went around it. And how, Carrie did that. And he did such an amazing job adding a present, eerie, sometimes not so present way that really elevated as well everything. It just elevated the production to a whole other level that was so beautifully subtle when necessary to be subtle and there when meant to be there. So that was another thing that, when we would get cuts of that and see it and hear it, I just loved how the world was continuing to develop. And that's another aspect that I think is pretty important. The audio side of everything is always just as important as the visual side.
Yeah, I mean, we had, oh, sorry, go ahead, Karen.
No, I was just gonna say, it really is a beautiful sound design. And it is, I would have been more crass if it were left up to me. I would be like, the planes would be like really loud because it's the airport hotel. Coming from my comedy background, but it was so embracing in a sense. So it's like Carrie Sound just sort of wraps its arms around you when you're experiencing it. And I do, just in reference to your last question, Sherry, I do want to say that for me, what was so exciting about this when you proposed it to us was that you're kind of looking for a way to do theater for those people who may never want to go to theater again, for those people who may never be able to go to theater, and to try to find something that is, it's not live theater. I mean, if somebody speaks Pochsy in the 360 isn't going to go, hey, isn't going to respond. And it's not film because you're in that room and you're right there. You could reach out and touch the person. So it is, I applaud Boca for searching for ways to create, I don't know how you've got all the language for it. I haven't. Viewer experiences that go beyond, a Zoom rendering of a play, for example, which for many of us is very hard to do, to to render a play in a form that it was never intended for. With this, we had to create something that was exactly meant for this medium. And I think that's why Sandi and I are interested to, push through into the future with it, because now we could even do that better.
Oh, thank you. And again, so appreciative that you guys took the leap and took such a risk with such important work that it's your life's work, and to put it in a medium that I feel has given access to us in a way that we have had with her in theater, and I'm sure we'll have with her in film, but something about existing with Pochsy and 360 is very, very special. I was chatting with Ross before this around, besides this Live Performance 360 series, this really is about making sure that artists have access to technology in a way, in immersive technology, especially because of the pandemic times, and also what kind of work we'll create from here on in. It's a really important aspect of what this series is. And another thing is definitely for audience members who pandemic or pre-pandemic that just can't go into the theater for whatever the reason is. Some might just because they're in a remote community. They're just too far. They're not going to go see theater. These are opportunities and examples that the more artists that engage and intersect, there'll be more opportunities for us to bring work to people. And the final one has to do with also presenters, right? I mean, there's different ways of putting live work into 360. Your approach is different. And then the Magic Hour approach is different. And then if there's everything in the middle and up and down, I mean, we're just at the beginning stages of it. And, that can also be archival and have presenters having access to more work, and also, less flying, which is good for climate and is good for the planet. So this is something to be investigating. Can't do it without the artists, right? Can't do it without the artists getting interested and engaging in the work and making sure artists have access to the technology. So again, I'm immensely grateful for the beautiful work that both of you have created, and so thankful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting us. It was a thrill.
Thank you so much.